Okay, so we're now recording. This is everybody can celebrate. This is your last week of business math. So everybody's happy. Although I know some of Mindy, I can see some of you wish you had a little more time. And that's the thing with these compressed classes, man. They come and go quick, and you go from not being stressed to being stressed as bad as you can imagine, then it just disappears. And you're just done, and you're on to the next thing. So for everybody here, go if you haven't done your discussions, go do your discussions. Those are an easy way to keep your grade up. Because Hannah told me earlier, Hannah G here. Is that your rap name, Hannah G? No. We're going. She told me she was like, my grade is better than what I thought it was, and I was like, yeah, because you showed up to class, which gives you your participation points, and then you do your discussions, and that's a pretty good bump for the grade. I mean, it's worth a lot.
It made a big difference.
It makes a huge difference. And if you look on the grades today, I put everything in that was done by the end of week 3. I did that today. So your grade is kind of real time. It's not going to show what you've done if you worked ahead, which a few people have into week 4. Your grade is not really going to reflect that because of the due dates, but you can see where you're at to the end of week 3. If you need extensions, all you got to do is just send it to me. Cengage makes us do that. I would prefer to be able to skip that somehow because, I mean, I got some mornings I sit there for 15 minutes just going Grant, hit the date, Grant, hit the date, Grant, hit the date. But it's just kind of what we're stuck with. So it's hot in here too. Hold on. All right. So speaking of discussions, week 4 discussion, I think we kind of need to look at that. Here we go. And I'm going to pull up week 4 discussion, because this is the one that will give you a little bit of a problem.
I'm a few minutes late, but I'm here.
Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you. Okay,
Hi.
now it's asking me to confirm my password, of course, so it's going to be a pain in the butt. Okay. So of course I'm going to have a difficulty because I never ask me for my password except for now. Okay, well, since it wants to be difficult, I think I have a way around it. There we go. Pull it up like this. So our week 4 discussion is the one that asks about, oh no, this is not the one I'm thinking about. Doggone it. I'm all messed up today tonight, ladies. You're gonna have to keep an eye on me here. Oh, no, it is the one I thought it was. Break even analysis. Okay. And has anybody looked at that one? No? Okay. Let me go over here, share the screen. Share this one right here. There we go. Can everyone see my screen now? All right, so break-even analysis confirms your cost and sales at what point your business will break even, which is where cost equals sales. This is a very important mathematical equation that will determine early on in your business if you are making enough income or creating enough sales to cover your costs. Not knowing this can create a sense of false security and can be devastating to a startup company. Anybody remember or know what's usually the biggest cost you have when running a business? Anybody?
Employees?
Labor. That's exactly right. Jeanette is on it. That is, for most businesses, that is their biggest cost. Okay. So that's just a piece of information. I learned that running my own business as well. The first time I had $100,000 payroll for a week, I felt sick to my stomach. It was just, it was just huge. And in some businesses, like the one I was in, it may take us 60 days to do a project. One project we were on for 6 months. Then you bill the customer when it's done, and it could be 90 days before you get paid. So you're tying up that money for multiple months. And when you're running a small business, it can get really, really, really stressful, because you may be waiting for a $750,000 check at some point, and it sounds like a whole lot, but you've paid so much in payroll over a period of 3, 4, 5, 6 months. You paid for materials, you paid for fuel, you paid for for us we paid for water, we paid for mud, we paid for fuel, we paid employees. We still had payments on all the equipment. We started to pay for all the insurances. So when you hear about revenue into these companies, don't really think that they're just, they had, $10 million in revenue last year. They can afford it. Well, maybe or maybe not. Okay, they they may had to go borrow money to keep themselves afloat before they got that check and then start paying people back. And you always have to have a war chest in there too. You have to have money to run. So it's quite a thing. So not to get what you need to know on this one: break-even point is equal to your fixed cost divided by selling price over variable cost. Now, and we're going to give you that. The expected average selling price is $7. Your estimated fixed cost is $75,000, and your variable costs are 50 cents. And that's going to be per at variable cost is going to be 50 cents for each sale, for each whatever you're selling there. And I'm not even sure what this is. Okay, so fixed costs, those are going to be your things like rent on the building, your insurance costs, your payments on any equipment, your salaried employees. Okay, those things that remain constant that you have to pay every month, no matter what. You have to keep the lights on. You have to make sure if it's winter, you keep your employees warm. If it's summer, you don't let them die of heat exhaustion. Or if you work on the second floor at CCC, you make sure they freeze anyway. Be 90 degrees outside, and I'm in my office with a jacket on, going, what's going on here? Am I lying, Hannah? No. So Armature rate calculate break-even point in units. So that's the key there. They want to know how many units you have to sell. All right. I guess I could pull this off. I can unshare this and we can just go over it real quick. I need to pull up my whiteboard. Right, so our break-even point going to be equal to our fixed cost, which they told us was $75,000, divided by $7 per unit minus 50 cents. So you end up with 75,000 divided by $6.50. Okay. Now this is going to give you the break-even unit in dollars, and what they're asking for is in units. So I'm not sure what this is. Let me go to my other. Screen here, pull up a spreadsheet. So we're going to do our 75,000 divided by $6.50. If I can remember how to spreadsheet here. There we go. All right. So $11,538.46. Okay. Now, that's not what they asked for, though. Remember, they asked for it in units. So we have to divide that by the selling price. And so it's going to be 1648.352. Now, remember, just as a matter of common sense here, we don't get to sell 0.352 of a unit, right? I always say round up to the very next unit. I know, rounding, we've kind of covered rounding, and it's always, if it's 3, then you round down. But when you're talking about sales like that, we're just going to go ahead and kick it up to the next unit. So that's going to be approximately equal to 1,649 units. Okay. Now that should get you through that particular discussion question. Now there's some, they asked some more questions on there, but the basics of this, and usually the reason I go over it is because people mess up right here and don't read that they're asking for it in number of units sold. Okay. And on this, they're going to change the fixed cost on you, and they may even change the variable cost on you too, because that becomes how well do you know your industry or your business. Fixed costs are one thing, but your variable costs can vary very, very, very widely depending on what happens. I've had it happen to me. I think, my variable costs are going to be one thing, and the next thing you know, they're much higher than I thought they were. So whenever when I would bid different projects, I would add a little fluff in here. I would say, hey, and I had my specific spots in my spreadsheets where I would always add a little bit more so I could always cover myself. It's no use going into business and then realizing that you're paying somebody else to do the work. We had one big job, the big one in Santa Fe. We were there for, I think it was 4 months, might have been a little longer. And just because of conditions that we had to work under, ground conditions that we weren't really aware of, it slowed us down a lot. Long story short, I would have been just as good off, because we went upside down in that job. I'd have been just as good off just to write $100,000 check and not ever done any work, because that's what actually happened. I did the job and lost $100,000 on it, and that leaves a mark. It stings. Once again, you see, well, they made $5 million in revenue, $10 million in revenue. Yeah, but what were their costs? Did they actually make money on that $10 million? So your profit is where it's at, not where your revenue. I mean, you have to have revenue, but that doesn't tell the whole story. So you have to make money through all that revenue. And many companies, I remember the part of the tech bubble was you had all these companies had all this huge revenue, but they weren't making any money, and eventually it caught up with them and they folded. And when that happened, the tech bubble burst and a lot of people lost a lot of money because they were invested in these companies. All right, so anybody have any questions on that? Questions, concerns? Going once, going twice. All right, so all right, so chapter 10. All right. And this is this deals with interest and payments, right? One of the things they talk about is simple interest, right? Simple interest is just the simple interest is just to kind of get you familiar with how interest works, because the simple interest is to make sure you remember it.
Hey, Steve, I don't think we could hear that.
Oh.
I didn't get that.
You didn't hear it or see it?
I didn't hear it.
Okay. Okay, so interest is equal to principal times rate times time. Did you catch it that time?
Yeah.
These new earbuds shouldn't be having a problem. That's one reason why I wanted them. Let's go over what principal is. Principal, it refers to the amount of money that you're going to borrow. Okay, that's your principal. Okay, your rate is going to be the average, your yearly interest rate they base that on, and then the time is however long you borrow it for. Okay, so usually interest is figured on a monthly basis, right? So when they give you an APR of like your credit cards, anybody, how many people have way too many credit cards? Raise your hand. No, I'm the only one. Would anybody like to help me pay mine then? Just asking for a friend. That a lot of these credit cards that you get into, 20, 21% interest. Okay. 20, 21% interest. So your monthly interest will be on a monthly basis. That's the way you want to figure it. So when you do that, 0.21 divided by 12. Once again, got to remember how to spreadsheet here. Per month. So if you're carrying a credit card with, when I move to my left, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Let me see if I can change my position here. I wonder, I bet you're hearing me through my laptop. That's a problem. Give me a second to fix that. My laptop decided to unhook from my earbuds. I'm sitting here wearing them, and I realize I'm hearing you guys through my computer speakers too. So that makes me one. Okay, but I can go way over here and you guys can hear me, right? All right. So let's say you're carrying a $2,000 balance on your credit cards. That means you're spending $35 per month in interest. Multiply that times 12. That's 350. That's what, $420 a year. Okay, that's how credit card companies make money. And that's, Okmulgee, that's a house payment. Okay, that's a car payment. That's a lot of money, and that's how credit cards make money. So let me get out of this here. Like I said, this is all just going to kind of some background. So one of the first questions on here, they say they give you a principal of $70,000. They give you the rate of 5 3/4%. They give you a time of 6 months, and they want to know what will be the interest on that loan over the life of the loan for 6 months. Okay. Now, like I said, this is simple interest. This doesn't take into account monthly payments taking off of your principal. It doesn't take into account compound interest, which there's a saying that they say, Einstein said compound interest was the eighth wonder of the world, or something like that. I'm not sure if he really said it, but compound interest is the way everything's done. So what we're looking at here is something really, really simple, kind of at the beginning of the process. So I'm going to put this in a decimal because it just makes it easier. 5.75%, which is equal to, get out of my way, 0.0575. Okay, that's what we're going to end up having to type in. Okay, your time is 6 months. Okay, but that is out of a year. So the time is actually going to be 0.5 years, right? Everybody see how that works? And then your principal is going to be $70,000. That's how much you borrowed. So my interest is equal to 70,000 times, what was my rate was 0.0575 times 0.5. And if we do that, $2,012.50. Okay. Now you're going to notice with interest rates, or you've probably already noticed, depending on the interest rate, usually depends on risk, and risk is categorized as a few things. The reason you're borrowing the money, the person borrowing the money. Okay. So a credit card is unsecured, right? And you could just stop making your credit card payment and they can come after you, but you could file bankruptcy. So they're carrying a lot of risk for letting you borrow that money. There's no tangible asset behind that either. It's not like buying a house, right? If you buy a house and stop making your payments, I can just come get your house. Buy a car, so that's why your credit card interest rates are so much larger than your car interest rates or your homeowner's interest rates. And they also base interest rates off of the prime rate, which is set by the Federal Reserve. Okay. I believe in 2 days, the Federal Reserve is going to meet, and they're going to announce an interest rate hike. They're going to have to. We don't know by how much. It could be 0.5%, it could be 3/4%, it could be a whole percent. I'm just thinking it's going to be 1%, and they're using that to cool off inflation in the economy. As everybody here has seen what inflation has done over the last few months, right? Starting with fuel prices,
when you go to the gas pump, I think I've said this to Hannah, maybe Aubrey, because this is my biggest complaint right now is I drive a Ford Focus hatchback and it costs me $45 to fill the thing up. That should be illegal somewhere. It's not like I'm filling up a pickup truck or a van. I fill up a Ford Focus hatchback, $45.
That's high.
Do what?
I said gas shouldn't be that high. You're right.
No, it shouldn't. And then look at food prices. I've noticed that my wife and I go to Walmart. It is a minimum of $100 bill just for stuff. And we've cut out a lot of, stuff we don't need. I mean, we were like, hey, yeah, I guess I'm not going to buy I'm getting Great Value canned corn this week. Or is it Great Value? I don't remember, but you know what I mean. We've kind of tried to tamp our spending down a little bit, and it's outrageous. And and that's just part of inflation. And going back to what I was saying before I get too far into that, which is the Federal Reserve is going to increase interest rates to try to push inflation back down to where it's manageable. And that's all these tricks that economists use. They lower the interest rate to make it easier to borrow money to help give the economy a kickstart. Okay, so the cheaper you can borrow the money, the better. Because companies, even large companies with lots of assets and lots of money in the bank, they like to borrow money at a very cheap rate. Okay, and that way they're not putting their own money at risk. They're putting somebody else's money at risk if they can get it at a good enough rate. I remember back in the 70s when I was a kid, and I know there's a few of us who were alive then, when during the Carter years, when the interest rates for like homes were up to like 12%. We're used to seeing them at 2.75, 3, 4%. People were buying homes at 12, 14% interest. And yeah, it was crazy. So everybody saw how we got that, I assume. I gave everybody enough time to that. All right. So simple interest, just make sure you make sure you whoa, did I do that right? Okay. In the problem, it says the interest rate is 5.75%, 5.75% for 6 months. Usually they give you a yearly rate and you have to cut that down. On that particular problem, they didn't. And I kind of just blazed through it, not even paying attention and getting the right answer. Now, so let me see if I can look these over. And that's just your regular, ordinary, simple interest. Problems look like that for a little while. I'm trying to get out of ordinary interest here. Has anyone dealt with compound interest before? We had any issues with that? Okay, well, what compound interest is compound interest is interest you gain off the interest that you gain. That is a clunky way of talking about it. So I put $1 in the bank at 10% interest, which you're not going to get from any bank, by the way. That means in a year, I will have $1.10 in the bank. Okay. Now, if I'm still getting 10% interest, the next year, I'm gonna multiply that times 10. That means I get $11 in interest. Add that to my $1.10, then I have $1.21. So you notice how the interest is kind of stacking on top of itself. And that's how, once again, how these credit card companies, your auto loan company, makes money. All right. The interest counts every month on any unpaid, and you'll find that they always pay the interest first. Right. So on your car loan, the first month of your car loan is going to be mostly interest. In fact, halfway through, you're paying more on interest than you are against the principal until you get halfway through it and it finally flips around for you. And so, you know, it just compounds and compounds and compounds, and you'll eat it. You know, let's say you have a $250 a month car payment. The first payment may be $200 interest, $50 to your principal. Okay, then the next time it may be $198 interest to $52 principal. And at some point, when you finally make that over, that's why it seems like it, you know, if you ever, and I have a spreadsheet I prepare that shows people how much interest they pay per month and everything else. You'll see that sometimes it's easy to pay. You borrow $10,000, and next thing you know, over a 5-year period, you're paying $18,000 back. Once again, that's, you know, that's why interest rates matter. When I went and bought the Focus hatchback, I'd already had my financing set up. I always do. I use an easy one like Capital One that I know will give me interest rates that's a little bit too high. But I know I have it in hand, and that gives me some leverage when I go into the car dealership. So I went in there, laid it down, did the car thing. I did it all over email. I bought this car sight unseen. I think I had my son go test drive it for me before I actually signed the papers. Because I was out of town. I figured my payment was going to be $250 a month. We'll go back with that. And so when they called me back and they said, okay, everything's fine, you can come get your car whenever you get back in town. Your payment's $320 a month. I said, well, that's not what I budgeted. Why is it $320 when I know what my payment should be? They said, well, we added on extended warranty. We added on gap insurance. I said, well, I didn't agree to that. But I did tell them, I said, if you can get my interest rate down low enough to sell me all that stuff and still keep my payment around my original payment, I will go for it. And so they went out searching for alternate lenders, and they found Tinker Credit Union right over there in the city. And I was able to get the extended warranty and the gap insurance and only spend like an extra $11 a month on my payment over what I budgeted originally instead of the $320. And so, you know, the difference between, you know, whatever it was, 9.5% interest from Capital One to the 3.25% interest they gave me through Tinker, man, I could buy another $3,000 worth of product and still keep my payment the same. So interest makes a lot of difference. It makes all the difference. And it goes the same way, not just when you're paying it out, but when you're receiving it. That's why when you're in putting your money someplace in investment, you're looking for something that's not only less risky, but you're looking for something that's going to pay the highest amount of interest you can. Putting in the savings account gives you minimal interest. All right. Because once again, it's that risk reward ratio that I kind of touched on earlier, which is the more risk you take with your money, the more reward you want back. That's why credit cards have a higher interest rate. That's why if you're investing your money with a stock company, you expect a larger return on your money instead of just putting in the bank that is somewhat safe, FDIC insured. Even if the bank goes out of business, the government's going to make sure you get your money back up to $250,000, which I believe is what it still is, just for having it. So interest can make a lot of difference, and it can make or break you when you're out here borrowing money. And especially when you're on a long-term loan, like you go buying a house. When you go buying a house, 0.5% on interest can mean thousands and thousands of dollars in the long term. because you're going to buy a house on a 30-year note. You know, if you're going to spend $100,000, and just do the simple interest, which just isn't actually correct, but just kind of to put a finer point on it. If my interest rate on $100,000 is $10%, that means that first year I'm gonna pay $10,000 in interest, as opposed to 5%, $5,000 in interest, right? So do that over a 30-year time. We're talking about thousands and thousands, thousands of dollars. Now I've gotten sidetracked. I am going to stop. Another thing I want to touch on here, which principal times rate is time. Hey, you can manipulate this to find anything you need to on here. Okay. Remember, we kind of touched on the algebraic formulas, and we say these letters are variables. They represent numbers. They're, in our mind, they are exactly the same as a number. They're just an unknown number. That's why we give them a letter. And we should probably remember that from high school, hopefully. Now, I can manipulate these just like I do numbers. So I know my interest is equal to principal times rate times time. But what if I know what the interest is, I know what the rate is, know what the time is. I want to figure out what the principal is. All right. Well, then I just divide by rate times time. Remember, I do on one side, I do the exact same thing on the other side of the equal sign. So my principal is equal to interest divided by rate times time. All right, so you can manipulate this just because it says here's your interest formula. You can move these around algebraically to figure out whatever you want to. Interest is equal to principal times rate times time. I know everything else, but I want to find out what time is. I know this, I know these two things. So I divide by principal and rate. Those go away. So time is equal to interest divided by principal and rate. So when you get into some of these problems, just know that they've given you one formula that you can manipulate algebraically to find whatever you need to find. All right, let's look at a difficult one here. And I'm on to another chapter because we are running quickly out of time. This is number 15 on your homework. Clear all drawings and stop hitting that button. And they say using ordinary interest, 360 days, calculate the missing information for the simple discount note, round dollars to the nearest cent. Okay, we really haven't covered this, but this is all based on the same stuff. So they tell me my face value is equal to $400. My discount rate is equal to 12.5%. The date of the note is September 5th. Term is equal to 106 days. And they want to know I'm not sure what they want to know. My page got cut off here. They want to know what the maturity date is. They want to know what the bank discount is. And they want to know what the proceeds are. And you'll see all of these terms in your reading. So don't get too freaked out, because this is like bond. This is like a simple form of bond valuations. So anytime, if you ever take a finance class later, you'll see a lot of this. I remember I took a my first undergrad is actually in finance. So I remember, you know, my first I had an entire class of nothing but bond valuations with a thick book like this. You know, it was insane. And you get so tired of all these things they throw at you. So the maturity date will be, so we're doing it 25 September. And we're going to go 106 days over that. And I'm going to go to my spreadsheet and do it the easy way. You also go to Google and do it as well. September 25th, that's, oh gosh, 9/25. And it was 100
the-
and, I'm sorry,
Is
what?
Is it the 5th or the 25th?
I said, oh, I'm sorry, the 5th. You're right. Okay. And I'm at 160 days, did I say 106 days? Man, I'm just not with it. And I'm just going to add that together. And that, if I go 106 days out, that gives me 20 December. And, you know, easiest way to do for me to do it is put it on a spreadsheet. But you know, sometimes you just got to go and count the days. And there's no leap year. There's no, if it's a leap year, September to December doesn't really count. So you don't have hiccup thrown in there every 4 years. So we already figured our maturity date is 20 December. Okay. The bank discount, and we get another formula here. Our bank discount is equal to our future value times our rate times our time. Okay. What looks like we've done here is we've bought a bond of some sort. Okay. A bond. Anybody ever bought any savings bonds? Like I said, some of us older heads may know what that's about, or received them from your aunt or grandma or something. And what bond has is a value. So let's say I buy $100 savings bond. I don't pay $100 for it. That $100 is a future value. I may pay $75 for it. So what they're doing is they're paying me to hold on to that bond, and I can't turn it back in until the maturity date. Okay. Companies sell bonds, cities sell bonds, the state and federal government sell bonds, and the bond I'm using, Chapter 7 has a day spreadsheet. Oh, okay. And like I said, back in the old days, you would get, your grandma would send you like a $20 bond that she paid $12 for, and you'd have to keep it for 5 years or whatever the maturity date was to get your whole $20 out of it. If you turned it in before the maturity date, then you would get less than the face value. Is that, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. All right. So my future value, which is the face value of that bond, is $400. My interest rate is 0.125, which is 12.5%. And the number of days is going to be 106 divided by 360. And the reason for that, they give you that in the problem. Okay. They'll let you know if you're doing it under 360 or 365 days. Depending on who you borrow from, depends on, do they use 365 days or 360 days in their calculations, and they tell you that. I'm going to go ahead and handle this part first. And get rid of that Wow. I have no idea where I'm at now. Okay. Get rid of that fraction out of the equation. Go ahead and turn it into a decimal because it makes it a lot easier. Just type it in your calculator. Stop laughing, Hannah. And then I'm just going to plug this into a calculator. Which is going to give me $14.72. Okay. All right, my proceeds going to be equal to the future value minus your discount. So I'm going to take my 400 minus the 1472, and that leaves me a 385.28. So that means if I want to go, and I'm not sure if this is the actual premise of the problem, but if I want to go buy a $400 bond and I want to hold it for 106 days, okay, then I go buy that bond with a face value $400 for, what did we say it was, 385.28. You hold on to it for 106 days, you turn it in, they give you 400. Kind of how bonds work. That's how companies and governments, one of the means they use to raise money. Okay, the companies most times sell stock in the company, but they can do bonds. Now you're going to get a higher interest rate buying a bond from a private company just because it's a riskier investment, right? The interest rate you're going to get from like the federal government is going to be a lot smaller because the federal government is borrowing money from you. War bonds is a good one. I forgot to say about war bonds. You ever hear about war bonds like back in World War II, buy war bonds? That was it. That was the federal government borrowing money from the citizens and paying it back at an interest rate. And so the interest rate buying a bond from the federal government is going to be a lot smaller because that money is backed by the faith and the ability of the entire federal government to pay you back. Okay, so it's less risky than if I go to Mindy's company where she sells, I don't know, whatever she sells. What she has in the background? Artwork. There's artwork back there. I see that. And she wants to raise money to expand her business, then it's a lot riskier. So she's going to have to pay me a lot more. So the face of that bond, the price of that bond compared to the face is going to be, quite a bit different. So did I beat the crap out of that enough? All right. So I'm going to kind of go off the reservation here for a minute. I know that's unlike me. And let's look at, and I didn't get as much covered here as I like, but let's look at a real world example of interest rate. And we're going to say we have principal, we have rate, we have time. And let's just do something simple like a car loan. Anybody, my son just bought a car. He bought it for $14,000, I think. Okay. Interest rate, we'll say, was 5.5%. And 5-year note. Okay. And so we want to know what the payment is. Well, the cool thing about Excel here is you can figure out what your payment is. Now, they're going to ask me for my rate. As you can see here, my rate is 6%, but that is figured monthly. So I have to divide that by 12. Actually, it's not 6%. Oh, don't hit enter. cancel this and make this. There we go, 5.5%. Now, it went ahead and rounded it up so we could see it, but it would still use 5.5% in the calculation, because what we see and what the computer uses is not always the same thing. So my payment, let me do my thing here. My rate is going to be my interest rate, but it's figured on a monthly basis, so I divide that by 12. My number of payments, well, I did my term in years, so I have to multiply that by 12 to get 60 payments. My present value is the amount I borrowed. And we want our future value to be 0. We want to pay it off at the end of the term. Now they have some other stuff here, which is interest figured at the beginning of the pay period. We're not going to worry about that now. That can make a difference of $1 or $2 on your payment. So that gives me a $267.42 payment on that car. I'm not sure how close this is to his. Notice that Excel figured that in red for us. All right. Now, that's a negative number. And the reason they do that is you borrow $14,000. That's money coming into you. Now you're making a purchase to it, right? But they're giving you money to go buy a thing. The reason that becomes negative is because the payment is money coming out of your pocket. Okay. So the money coming to you to buy the car is a positive. The payment going out is coming out of your pocket. It automatically shows up in red there. Now, on your first payment, okay, we know our payment's $267. We're going to borrow our $14,000, multiply that times our 0.055 divided by 12. And the interest you are going to pay that first month, because that's a nice low interest payment, not so bad, that interest payment is going to be $64.17. Okay, so what you're actually cutting off of here is you're actually only taking $203.25 off your loan. Okay, and that happens every month, which means your new, I'll put my loan amount here. The amount you actually owe now is $13,796.75. Okay. And I should have done it like this. Now, the point I made earlier, which was interest rate makes a lot of difference. Well, what if your credit's a little iffy, you're young, you know, you've had some problems, or you don't have a credit history, and they end up giving you 11% interest? Well, you notice your payment went up to $304 a month, but also you went up to paying $128.33 that first month in your interest. And so you're only paying $176 towards the actual principal of that loan. So that's why I say interest makes a big difference. And as you spread this out over a longer period of time, and let's do something like a house, all right? $125,000 for a house, 2.75% interest. Now our term is going to be 30 years. And I made a mistake here. Let me do this. Turn that into that. Okay, so on a house payment over such a long period of time, Okay. You're going to have a $510 a month plus payment. Now that's just your payment towards the loan. That's not your interest, or that's not your insurance and your tax payments, right? They usually throw that into an escrow account that gets paid once a year. It's just purely on the loan you made. If you can see here, that first month, you're paying more in interest than you are against the amount of the loan. Okay. And so every month, this is going to get a little bit smaller, and that's going to get a little bit larger until finally, towards the end of the loan, you're really taking a big bite out of that principal, right? But until then, you're taking small bites, and it seems like it takes so long to get ahead on something like that. Everybody kind of see how that works? That's just kind of some real life stuff I want to throw in there. When you go to borrow money, you really, you know, I used to keep, now I have a phone, you know, with a spreadsheets and everything on it. But back in the old days, I'd keep my little business calculator with me. And when I went in to buy a car, take any kind of loan out, man, I'm all over it. Salesmen used to hate, because they're like, I'm like, oh, hold on, I'm not getting the same numbers you're getting. Walk me through it. You know, and usually it's because they want to do things like add stuff in, you know, well, we went ahead and added in gap insurance. Well, I didn't, hold on, you know. And so you have to watch your money, you know, interest rate too. Are they trying to charge you for undercoating on your car? Hey, we're going to spray undercoating on it, because in Oklahoma, we worry about that, right? It's not like we live in a coastal sea town or up north where they put a lot of salt on the roads. So, and they try to make money any way they can, and buying a house is no different. Okay. It's just a lot more complicated, but like I said, first month, you're paying more in interest than you are actually against the money you bought. And that will go on for half of your term of your loan. It'll take you 15 years to flop that over. So, all right. I know we didn't get through as much stuff, but it is 7:01. I'm going to end. I saw somebody, we read the chat here real quick. Stop share. Bloody. There we go. So, okay, then with church says spreadsheet, we had Joe was in Navy. We had to do that. Joe was in Navy in Hawaii. Okay, and then Victoria says she needed for my first payment vehicle. Yes, absolutely. You know, and you know, sometimes interest rates are what they are. You know, everybody's interest is, all interest that you're going to pay right now is going to be based on the prime rate, which is set by the Federal Reserve. And that rate is the amount the Federal Reserve charges banks to borrow money from them on an overnight basis. Banks are required to keep so much of their money in cash reserves. And if they don't have that, then they go to Federal Reserve and borrow that money on a daily basis until they can meet that cash reserves. So once again, probably nothing we need to know in here, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And this is the official class.